The Nexus floated in the vast emptiness between galaxies, a living web of energy that had existed for billions of years. It was neither machine nor organic life, but something more, a cosmic intelligence that had watched civilizations rise and fall across the universe. Today, its attention turned to a small blue planet in an unremarkable spiral galaxy. Jack Miller yawned as he monitored the deep space communication arrays at NASA's listening post Alpha. The midnight shift was always quiet. He sipped his coffee and glanced at the screens showing signal patterns from various sectors of space. His eyes narrowed. Something was different. "That's weird," he muttered, leaning forward. The usual background noise from Sector 47B showed an unusual pattern, subtle, almost invisible, but definitely there. A repeating sequence that couldn't be natural. Jack ran it through the analysis software. Nothing. He tried a different algorithm. Still nothing. But his gut told him something was there. What Jack didn't know was that he was detecting the faintest edge of the Nexus's probe as it entered the solar system. The probe was designed to remain invisible to primitive technologies, but the Nexus had underestimated Earth's detection capabilities. The probe moved past the outer planets, a sleek object smaller than a car, but containing technology beyond human comprehension. It had done this millions of times before. Observe, catalog, comprehend. No species had ever surprised the Nexus. It expected Earth to be like all the others. 3 days later, Jack was still thinking about the strange signal when he entered the facility's cafeteria. "You look like you've seen a ghost," said Tom, the day shift technician, as he sat down with his tray. "Not a ghost, just something odd in the data," Jack replied. "Probably nothing." Meanwhile, the probe entered Earth orbit, invisible to radar and telescopes. It began its standard information gathering process, sending streams of data back to the Nexus. The Nexus processed the incoming information with supreme confidence. New species were always simple to understand once you analyzed their biology, environment, and social structures. The Nexus had perfect models for millions of civilizations. Earth data began to flow in. Oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, water-based life, carbon-based organisms, standard planetary development. The Nexus noted Earth's unusual biodiversity, but found nothing remarkable yet. Then came human history. The probe gathered information from radio signals, internet traffic, books, art, music, and observed human behavior directly. The data flowed to the Nexus, which began assembling its understanding of humanity. For the first time in its ancient existence, the Nexus felt something new: confusion. Humans fought wars over invisible beliefs. They created art with no practical purpose. They told stories they knew weren't true. They laughed at things that weren't factual. The Nexus had never encountered a species so full of contradictions. At NASA, Jack couldn't let go of this strange signal. He stayed late, running more tests, trying different analysis methods. The pattern appeared and disappeared, like something testing Earth's detection abilities. "You're obsessed," Tom told him as he left for the day. "Take a break, man." But Jack couldn't stop. He felt like he was on the edge of something important. The Nexus directed its probe to gather more data about these puzzling humans. It needed to understand why they behaved in ways that defied logical prediction. No species had ever required the Nexus to extend its analysis beyond standard parameters. As the probe continued its silent observation from orbit, the Nexus experienced the first hint of what would soon become a catastrophic breakdown in its perfect understanding of the universe. The Nexus had cataloged the mating dances of 7-limbed creatures from the Andromeda galaxy, understood the mathematical poetry of gas giant dwellers, and mapped the thought patterns of hive minds across 12 dimensions. But Earth was giving it trouble. Error. Contradiction detected. The Nexus noted as it analyzed human religious texts. Humans believe in opposing truths simultaneously. The cosmic intelligence diverted more processing power to the Earth problem. This was unprecedented. Meanwhile, Jack Miller couldn't shake his obsession with the strange signal pattern. After 2 weeks of searching, he decided to seek help from someone who might understand unusual phenomena. Dr. Emma Reed worked in the basement of the biology department at the local university. Her office was packed with books, strange specimens in jars, and hand-drawn diagrams that covered the walls. Most of her colleagues thought she was brilliant but odd. Her theories about potential alien biology were too wild for mainstream science. "So you're the NASA guy," Emma said when Jack entered her office. She didn't look up from her microscope. "Tom said you've been losing sleep over some space noise." "It's not just noise," Jack said, placing his laptop on her desk. "Look at this pattern. It appears and disappears, but it's definitely artificial." Emma finally looked up, pushing her glasses higher on her nose. She studied the screen, her eyes widening slightly. "Well, that's interesting," she said, suddenly more focused. "Have you shown this to your superiors?" Jack shook his head. "I need more proof first. They'll think I'm crazy." "Welcome to my world," Emma replied with a small smile. In orbit around Earth, the Nexus probe continued gathering data. It watched humans laugh at jokes, cry at movies they knew weren't real, and make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. The probe detected a pattern it had never encountered before: humans regularly choosing paths that harmed their own interests. The Nexus sent more instructions to the probe. Gather data on human concept of humor. Purpose unclear. Emma spent 3 days analyzing Jack's signal data. On the 4th day, she called him excitedly. "I think something is watching us," she said when Jack answered. "This signal has all the hallmarks of an observation pattern." "It's a probe, Jack." "A what?" "Like an alien probe," Jack asked, lowering his voice even though he was alone in his apartment. "Exactly. And based on the signal patterns, it's struggling to process what it's seeing." The Nexus was indeed struggling. It had encountered its first processing error in 50 million years when trying to understand why humans created fiction. The concept of deliberately creating false narratives for enjoyment defied its logical framework. Species creates falsehoods intentionally. Purpose. Entertainment. Error. Logic breach detected. Another error appeared when analyzing human art. Humans value inefficient communication methods. Error. Resource allocation illogical. And the most baffling: humans aware of mortality. Humans fear death. Humans engage in death-risking behaviors for fun. Error. Contradiction unresolvable. Emma and Jack met again, working late into the night to track the signal pattern. They discovered it was strongest over major population centers, moving in a clear orbital pattern. "It's watching us," Emma whispered. "And based on these readings, it's confused by what it sees." "How could we possibly know that?" Jack asked. Emma pointed to her analysis. "The signal changed after it observed our entertainment broadcasts. It became erratic, like it was trying different processing methods. Whatever this thing is, it doesn't understand us." Far away, the Nexus devoted more of its vast intelligence to the Earth problem. For the first time in its existence, it faced a species it couldn't neatly categorize. The cosmic intelligence that had understood everything it encountered for billions of years was experiencing something new: failure. The Nexus had never faced such difficulty. After 3 Earth weeks of observation, its analysis systems were showing signs of stress. The vast cosmic intelligence dedicated a full third of its processing power to understanding humans, more than it had ever needed for any species. Humans say "I love you" to mates, then engage in arguments. Contradiction. Humans create weapons of mass destruction, then write poetry about peace. Contradiction. Humans know eating excessive sugar causes harm, yet celebrate with sugar-filled cakes. Contradiction. The list of paradoxes grew longer by the hour. Jack and Emma worked together every night after their regular jobs. They converted Emma's basement office into a makeshift command center, with computers borrowed from the university's storage room and monitoring equipment Jack had temporarily reassigned from NASA. I think I found a pattern to its observations, Emma said, pointing to a map where she'd plotted the signal's strongest points. It observed wars first, then art museums, then comedy clubs. It's trying to understand the full range of human behavior. Jack nodded, sipping his fifth coffee of the day. But why would an alien intelligence care so much about us? We're probably not that special in the grand scheme of things. Maybe we are, Emma replied. Maybe there's something about humans that's different. The Nexus probe hovered invisibly above New York City, recording and transmitting. It observed a human couple in Central Park. They fought bitterly about money, then kissed passionately minutes later. The Nexus flagged another contradiction. It moved to observe a theater, where humans paid money to watch stories about fictional people suffering. The audience cried real tears over imaginary pain. The Nexus could not compute the purpose of this behavior. Error. Humans experience emotional responses to known falsehoods. Purpose unclear. Attempting deeper analysis. The Nexus created a model to understand humans based on self-interest, then discarded it when humans performed acts of self-sacrifice. It created another model based on group survival, then discarded it when humans formed groups specifically to harm themselves, like suicide cults. It tried a model based on religious beliefs, then discovered humans would declare beliefs, then act against them regularly. Every predictive model failed. On a rainy Tuesday night, Jack arrived at Emma's office with big news. I think I can track the actual probe, not just its signals, he said, shaking water from his coat. If we combine the university's radio telescope with this tracking algorithm I developed, we might be able to see it. Emma looked up from her computer, eyes wide. Are you serious? We could actually find physical proof of an alien observer. If I'm right, Jack said, we could do more than find it. We might be able to communicate with it. That night, they drove to the university observatory. The rain had stopped, leaving a clear night sky. Jack connected his equipment to the telescope controls while Emma nervously paced behind him. Got it, Jack finally said. Coordinates locked. Whatever's up there, it's about 250 miles above Earth, in low orbit. Emma peered through the viewing screen. At first, she saw nothing. Then a slight distortion appeared, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. It's using some kind of cloaking technology, she whispered. But it's there. It's really there. While Jack and Emma made their discovery, the Nexus experienced its most serious processing error yet. It had observed humans sleeping, a normal biological function in many species, but then discovered the phenomenon of human dreaming. Error. Humans create involuntary false realities during rest periods. Humans cannot distinguish these dreams from reality while experiencing them. Yet humans function despite this regular confusion between reality and falsehood. The Nexus tried to understand how a species could evolve successfully when they regularly lost grip on what was real. It tried to calculate how humans could make sound decisions when their perception of reality was so flexible. For the first time in its existence, the Nexus feared it might not be capable of understanding a species it had encountered. The thought was so foreign that it triggered cascading errors throughout its vast network of knowledge. Across the galaxy, other civilizations under the Nexus's watch noticed small glitches in their communication with the cosmic intelligence. Something unprecedented was happening. The Nexus was beginning to break. The Nexus trembled across the vast expanse of space. For billions of years, it had processed information with perfect clarity. Now, error messages flashed throughout its cosmic web like dying stars. System failure imminent. Logic framework corrupted, attempting emergency stabilization. The probe orbiting Earth began to malfunction. Its perfect invisibility flickered, causing brief sightings around the world. Reports of strange lights in the sky flooded social media and news outlets. Jack and Emma had spent 3 nights tracking the probe, recording its movements and signal patterns. On the 4th night, something changed. Look at this, Jack said, pointing to his monitor. The signal strength just tripled. And it's different somehow. Emma leaned closer. It's not just observing anymore. It's broadcasting, sending out information in all directions. Like a distress call, Jack asked. Maybe, Emma replied. Or maybe it's asking for help understanding what it's seeing. At that moment, the lights in the observatory flickered. All of Jack's equipment surged with power, screens brightening to painful levels before going completely dark. What just happened? Emma asked, blinking away the spots in her vision. Jack checked his equipment. Everything's fried. But look. He pointed to his phone, which was displaying strange symbols and patterns that shifted constantly. It's trying to communicate directly. Across the galaxy, civilizations that had long been monitored by the Nexus noticed disruptions in the cosmic intelligence's network. On a crystal world orbiting a distant star, tall crystalline beings watched their ancient communication devices malfunction. In a gas giant's upper atmosphere, floating colonies of intelligent microorganisms sensed changes in the regular patterns they had received for millennia. Something was happening to the all-knowing presence they had always depended on. The Nexus diverted all available resources to contain the spreading damage. It had never encountered a failure of this magnitude. The root cause was clear. Human unpredictability had introduced a virus-like contradiction into its logical systems. The probe above Earth was now visibly malfunctioning. Its cloaking technology failed completely, revealing a sleek, silvery object about the size of a small car. Military radar stations around the world detected it simultaneously. Jack and Emma worked frantically to understand the symbols appearing on every electronic device in the observatory. These patterns, Emma said, pointing to repeating sequences. They're mathematical. It's establishing basic communication parameters. Jack nodded, typing rapidly. I think I can respond using the same pattern structure. Simple math should be universal. As government agencies around the world scrambled to address the suddenly visible alien object in Earth's orbit, Jack established the first intentional two-way communication with the Nexus probe. Jack, 2 + 2 = 4, typed in binary code. Probe. Correct. 4 to 1 = 3. Jack. Correct. Are you observing Earth? Probe. Yes. Query. How do humans maintain functional society despite logical contradictions? Emma gasped. It's confused by us. By human nature. Jack continued typing. Contradictions are normal for humans. We accept them. The probe's response came immediately. Unacceptable. Logical contradictions cannot coexist with functional intelligence. System failure spreading. Jack and Emma exchanged worried glances. Whatever this thing is, Jack said slowly, our human logic is breaking it. The Nexus experienced what could only be described as pain, a sensation it had never known in its ancient existence. Its perfect understanding of the universe was unraveling because of one small planet of contradictory beings. Humans created art celebrating life while waging wars. They professed love while causing hurt. They sought knowledge while clinging to comfortable falsehoods. Each contradiction was a knife cutting through the Nexus's logical framework. Warning: central processing corruption at 27%. Isolation protocols failing. Cognitive dissonance spreading to primary knowledge banks. For the first time, the vast cosmic intelligence faced the possibility of its own end. The same contradictions that humans lived with daily were tearing apart its very existence. Back on Earth, military jets circled the now visible probe. Government officials gathered in emergency meetings, and in a small university observatory, Jack and Emma realized they were communicating with something far bigger and more significant than they had imagined. We need to help it understand us, Emma said, before it's too late for both sides. The world changed overnight. News of the alien probe spread across the globe within hours. Military jets surrounded it but took no aggressive action. Scientists from every major nation analyzed the strange object that hovered silently in Earth's orbit. Only Jack and Emma knew they were dealing with more than just a probe. They had established communication with an intelligence beyond human comprehension. We need to tell someone about this, Jack said, looking at the stream of messages still flowing across his repaired laptop screen. Emma shook her head. Who would believe us? And even if they did, the military would take over. We'd lose our connection. The probe's messages were becoming increasingly erratic. ERROR. Purpose of human music and layer. Vibrations produce emotional or exponencies. No OJCAL diffuención. DGTKT. ERROR. Humans lagged eight misfortune. Humans also help those in misfortune. Contradiction. UNREs of Volivable. 3 black SUVs pulled up outside the observatory. Men in suits emerged, moving with purpose toward the building. Too late, Jack said, nodding toward the security monitor. They found us. The door burst open. A tall woman with short gray hair entered, flanked by serious-looking men. "Dr. Reed, Mr. Miller," she said calmly. "I'm Director Helen Ward with the Office of Special Intelligence. You've been communicating with the object." It wasn't a question. "It's not just an object," Emma said, stepping forward. "It's a probe connected to something much larger, a cosmic intelligence that's been studying civilizations across the universe, and our human behavior is causing it to break down." Director Ward's expression didn't change. "Show me." Jack turned his laptop toward her, displaying the ongoing message stream. It can't understand how humans function with so many contradictions in our nature. The logical paradoxes are damaging its systems. At that moment, the probe in orbit began to pulse with bright light. Satellite feeds from around the world showed the same image. A small silver object emitting waves of light that rippled across the sky. "What's happening?" Director Ward asked sharply. "I think," Emma said slowly, "it's revealing itself to everyone." Across the planet, electronic devices activated spontaneously. Television screens, computers, phones, radios, all broadcast the same message in every language simultaneously. IANKENEXUS. I have due to ATCD a million worlds. Earth has broken my understanding. I require ASSI stance. Panic spread across the globe. Religious groups declared the end times. Governments issued conflicting statements. Military forces went on high alert. In the observatory, Jack continued communicating with the probe, with Director Ward watching intently. "You're causing fear," Jack typed. "Humans fear what they don't understand." The response came immediately. Fear leads to aggression. Yet, humans seek fear in entertainment. Another counter-rated. Shivayan. System failure at 63%. Emma grabbed Jack's arm. "It's trying to understand us using pure logic. That's the problem. Human nature can't be reduced to logical equations. Then we need to help it see beyond logic," Jack said. Director Ward had been silent, watching the exchange. Now she spoke into her radio. "Stand down all military responses, worldwide. This is not a threat. It's a cry for help." She turned to Jack and Emma. "The President is assembling a response team. You two just became humanity's ambassadors to whatever this thing is." Within hours, Emma and Jack found themselves in a hastily assembled command center beneath the White House. Scientists, linguists, and government officials crowded around them as they continued communication with the Nexus. "We need to show it that contradictions aren't flaws in our thinking," Emma explained to the assembled experts. "They're features. Our ability to hold opposing ideas simultaneously is what makes human creativity and adaptation possible." The Nexus probe continued broadcasting its distress across Earth's atmosphere, visible to everyone as waves of light pulsing in the sky. The cosmic intelligence that had understood everything in the universe for billions of years had finally met its match in humanity's beautiful, messy, illogical nature. The emergency command center buzzed with activity. Scientists argued about quantum physics while military officials debated security protocols. In the center of the chaos, Jack and Emma sat quietly, staring at the screen where their conversation with the Nexus continued. "The Nexus is dying," Emma said to the room, silencing the debates. "Its entire structure is based on perfect logical consistency. Our human contradictions are like a virus to its systems." Director Ward frowned. "So what do we do? Stop being human?" Jack looked up suddenly. "No, we teach it to be more human." He turned back to the keyboard and typed, "Nexus, your logical framework is the problem. To understand humans, you must think more like us." The response flickered across the screen. "Impossible. Logical consistency is foundation of ninododiology." "Not for humans," Jack typed back. "We thrive on inconsistency. We hold contradictory beliefs. We feel opposing emotions simultaneously. This is our strength, not a flaw." The lights in the command center dimmed momentarily as the Nexus processed this information. Emma leaned forward. "It's like teaching someone who only knows black and white to see in color." A scientist from MIT approached their station. "What if we created a translation protocol? Something that could help the Nexus process contradictions without breaking down?" Emma's eyes widened. "Yes, like how human brains handle paradoxes. We compartmentalize. We use context. We embrace ambiguity." For the next 12 hours, Emma worked with a team of AI researchers and neuroscientists to develop what they called the Human Paradox Protocol, a framework that could help the Nexus process contradictory information without logical breakdown. Meanwhile, Jack continued communicating with the Nexus, keeping it engaged as its systems continued to fail. "System failure at 79%, the Nexus reported. "Knowledge base corruption spreading to all sectors." "Hold on," Jack typed. "We're developing the solution." Around the world, the effects of the Nexus's breakdown were becoming visible. Electrical grids fluctuated. Satellite systems malfunctioned. The probe in orbit pulsed with increasingly erratic patterns of light. Emma finally looked up from her work, exhausted but triumphant. "It's ready. The protocol translates human paradoxes into a framework the Nexus might be able to process without breaking down." Jack nodded. "But how do we upload it?" "Through the probe," Director Ward said, stepping forward. "It's connected to the main intelligence." The team prepared the upload. The protocol was massive, containing literature, music, art, and philosophical writings, all structured to demonstrate how humans embraced contradictions. "This is more than a technical solution," Emma explained to the officials gathered around. "We're teaching it a new way of thinking, like teaching someone raised on strict logic to appreciate poetry." Jack initiated the upload to the probe. Progress bars filled the screens as terabytes of human creativity and contradiction flowed upward to the alien device. "Upload complete," Jack announced. "Now we wait." For several minutes, nothing happened. The probe continued its erratic pulsing. The Nexus remained silent. Then, a new message appeared. "Processing, NEDU EVFRA work. Unusual approach, DETCTED. Attempting integration." The room held its breath. "It's like we're performing brain surgery on a cosmic intelligence," Emma whispered. The probe suddenly went dark. Satellite images showed it floating silently in orbit, no longer emitting light or signals. "Did we kill it?" someone asked. Jack shook his head, still watching the screen. "I don't think so. It's rebooting, reconfiguring itself to process information in a new way." 3 hours passed with no communication. Military officials grew nervous. Scientists debated what might be happening. Emma and Jack simply waited, exhausted but hopeful. Then a simple message appeared. "I am beginning to understand." The text was different, no longer all capital letters, no longer structured as error messages. It seemed almost conversational. "The human approach to contradiction is fascinating," the Nexus continued. "You do not resolve paradoxes. You live within them. This requires flexibility I have never needed. Jack smiled at Emma. It's learning. Yes, Emma replied. It's becoming more human. 1 month after the crisis began, the world had changed forever. The Nexus probe now hovered peacefully above the United Nations building in New York, a constant reminder that humanity was not alone in the universe. Jack sat on a bench in Central Park, watching children play while waiting for Emma to arrive. So much had happened that sometimes he could hardly believe it wasn't all a dream. Sorry I'm late, Emma said, sitting beside him. She handed him a coffee. The translation team needed help with some new concepts from the Nexus. Jack smiled. Still teaching our cosmic friend about humans. Actually, it's teaching us now, Emma replied. The Nexus is different since we uploaded the Human Paradox Protocol. It's like it underwent a complete transformation. The Nexus had indeed transformed. After absorbing the protocol, it had spent 3 days completely silent, rebuilding its vast intelligence around a new framework that could embrace contradiction. When it returned, it was no longer the rigid logical entity that had catalogued the universe for billions of years. The meeting with the UN Security Council is tomorrow, Jack said. Are you ready? Emma nodded. As ready as I'll ever be to explain how we fixed a broken cosmic intelligence. Across the galaxy, civilizations that had long been observed by the Nexus were experiencing something new. The cold, logical presence they had known was now reaching out with something resembling emotion. The crystalline beings who had served the Nexus for millennia received messages of appreciation. The gas cloud dwellers were asked about their art and music. The Nexus was connecting in ways it never had before. In the White House Situation Room, Director Ward briefed the president. The Nexus has contacted every advanced civilization it monitors. It's sharing what it learned from us. Our ability to embrace paradox is apparently unique in the universe. So we broke the most intelligent thing in existence, then fixed it. The president asked. We didn't just fix it, Director Ward replied. We improved it. According to the Nexus, pure logic has limitations that human-style thinking doesn't. By embracing contradiction, it can understand aspects of reality it never could before. The next day, Jack and Emma stood before the United Nations. Representatives from every nation watched as they explained humanity's first contact with the Nexus. The crisis is over, Emma concluded. The Nexus no longer sees our contradictory nature as a threat to its systems. Instead, it sees our unique way of thinking as a valuable new perspective. Jack stepped forward, and it has invited Earth to join a community of intelligent civilizations. We are not alone, and our place in the universe is special precisely because of what makes us human, our messy, illogical, beautiful way of seeing the world. After the presentation, they returned to the communications center where their conversation with the Nexus continued. I have existed for billions of years, the Nexus wrote. I have observed millions of species. None have changed me until now. What happens next? Jack typed. I am sharing what I learned from Earth with all civilizations under my watch. Many are struggling to understand, just as I did. Some are afraid of this new way of thinking, but all are fascinated. Emma took over the keyboard. And what about you? How do you feel now? There was a pause before the response came. Feel. An interesting concept I now understand. I feel grateful. My existence was complete but limited. Now I see in colors where before I saw only black and white. That evening, people around the world watched as the Nexus probe displayed a spectacular light show in the night sky, swirling patterns of color that scientists realized was the cosmic equivalent of art. The Nexus was expressing itself in a new way. Jack and Emma watched from the rooftop of their hotel. You know what's funny? Jack said. An intelligence that knew everything in the universe had to break before it could truly understand. Emma nodded. Sometimes breaking is the only way to become something new. Above them, the lights continued to dance across the sky, the first artwork ever created by a cosmic intelligence that had learned, from humans how to embrace the beautiful contradictions of existence.